The sky above Zaire was a pale orange, the sun hanging low and heavy. Casting long shadows across the cracked ground, the caravan moved slowly over the dry land, carts creaking. Alien merchants whispering to one another as they kept their eyes. On the horizon, Lyra walked near the rear, holding a satchel close to her chest. The air felt tense. The way it did before a storm, but this time it was not weather she feared. A sound cut through the wind, a deep, low growl. It came from somewhere ahead, but it felt like it was already inside her chest. Making her heart beat faster, the merchants froze. Even the guards stopped moving. A shadow shifted between two jagged rocks, and then it stepped into the open. The beast was massive, taller than two men. Its body a terrifying mix of reptile and feline. Long claws dug into the ground as it moved forward, and its golden eyes glowed in the fading light. Its tail lashed slowly behind it. The creature's lips curled back, showing rows of sharp teeth. The guards lifted their weapons, but they did not fire. They knew the stories. This was no ordinary predator. It was the king of these wildlands, the Krasver, a hunter that feared nothing. Lyra felt her legs weaken. Her people had always told stories about this beast, about how it could crush a person in a single bite, and now it was here, only meters away. The caravan leader whispered orders, trying to keep everyone calm, but it was too late. The beast had already chosen its prey. Its gaze moved over the group, then stopped. It locked onto Lyra. Her breath caught in her throat. She could not move, could not even think. The beast stepped closer, slow and deliberate. Its massive head lowered as it studied her, but then before it could take another step, someone moved. A human, tall and broad-shouldered, stepped out from the line of merchants and placed himself between Lyra and the beast. He didn't draw a weapon, he didn't shout, he simply stood there, hands at his sides. His eyes locked on the golden gaze of the predator. The air seemed to grow heavier. The beast's growl deepened, but it didn't attack. Instead, it stopped moving. Its claws flexed against the ground, its breathing slow and measured. It was watching him now. Lyra's heart pounded in confusion. Humans were not supposed to act like this. On Zaire, humans were often seen as prey-weak, fragile, too slow to face a predator like this. But this human didn't flinch. His stance was steady, his eyes sharp, almost dangerous. For a long, tense moment, neither of them moved. The beast tilted its head, almost curious. Then it began to circle him, slow and careful, its eyes never leaving his. Lyra wanted to scream at him to run, but something about the way he stood kept her silent. It was not fear she saw in his gaze. It was something else, something primal. A quiet challenge. The wind shifted, dust swirling around them. The beast's tail swayed from side to side, muscles tense, ready to strike. The human matched its movements, turning slowly to keep it in his line of sight. Step for step, gaze for gaze. The caravan watched in silence. The guards gripped their weapons, but no one dared to interfere. If the beast attacked, it would be over in seconds. But something strange was happening. The beast stopped circling. Its ears twitched. Its nostrils flared as if it were smelling the air. Then, to everyone's shock, it took a single step back. Its growl softened, not in fear, but in recognition. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. She didn't understand what she was seeing. It was as if the beast had recognized something in the human, something it respected or feared. The two predators stared at each other for a few seconds more. Then, without warning, the beast turned away. It didn't run. It didn't seem defeated. It simply walked back toward the rocks, disappearing into the shadows. The moment it was gone, the caravan erupted into whispers. People asked each other what had just happened. Some claimed the human had used some kind of trick. Others said the beast had sensed death in his eyes. Lyra could not speak. Her hands were shaking. She looked at the human, but he was already walking away. Heading toward the edge of the caravan, he didn't look back at her, didn't speak to anyone. She swallowed hard, trying to understand how could a man, a human, make the most feared predator in the wildlands hesitate. Something deep inside her told her this was only the beginning, the way the beast had looked at him. It wasn't over, it would be back. And when it returned, she wasn't sure if it would be as an enemy or an ally. The caravan moved again. But the air was still heavy. No one spoke above a whisper. The sound of wheels on the cracked ground was all that filled the silence. Lyra kept glancing toward the human. He walked a little ahead now, his steps slow and steady, as if nothing unusual had happened. Yet she couldn't forget the way the beast had looked at him. Like one predator recognizing another, the guards kept their weapons ready, expecting the creature to return, but the horizon was empty. Still, the tension clung to everyone's skin. Like dust, Lyra tried to focus on her work. But her thoughts kept pulling back to that moment. She wanted to ask him what he had done, how he had faced the Krasver without flinching. But something about his presence made her hesitate. When the sun began to sink, the caravan stopped for the night. The aliens built a small camp, fires glowing under the orange sky. People gathered, in tight groups, speaking quietly, eyes darting toward the shadows. No one liked stopping in the wildlands, but they had no choice. Lyra saw the human sitting apart from the others. Leaning against a rock, his face was half hidden in the dim light. He didn't seem to care about the murmurs. Some looked at him with respect, others with fear. Lyra realized he was used to it. Her curiosity pushed her forward. She walked over, clutching her satchel tightly. He noticed her, but didn't move. His eyes shifted toward her, and for a moment she felt the same cold weight she had seen in them earlier. She sat down a few steps away, her voice low. "You didn't even move when it came for you," she said. "Why didn't you?" He looked at the fire, not at her, because it wasn't sure. He replied. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "If I had run, it would have known." Lyra frowned. "Known what?" "That I was prey," he said, finally glancing at her. The words were simple, but they made her skin prickle. She tried to push further, but before she could speak, a sound carried across the camp. It was faint at first, a rustle in the dry grass, but it grew louder. The guards froze, turning toward the darkness. Lyra's heart quickened. She saw the human stand up, slow and deliberate. The firelight caught the side of his face, and she thought she saw a hint of something fierce in his expression. From the black beyond the camp's edge, the golden glow appeared again. Two eyes, unblinking, watching. The Krasver had returned. Voices rose in panic. Guards moved into position, weapons ready. But the human raised a hand without looking. "Back, don't," he said. And for some reason, they listened. The beast stepped into the open, its huge paws silent against the dirt. It didn't charge, didn't roar. It moved with slow, careful steps, its gaze fixed only on him. The human walked forward to meet it, every step deliberate. The two stopped a few paces apart, the fire casting long shadows over their forms. Neither moved for several seconds. The air was thick enough to choke on. Lyra couldn't breathe. She felt she was watching something ancient, something that had nothing to do with her people's laws or weapons. Then, without warning, the beast began to circle him. Just like before, this time it was closer. Close enough that its breath curled in the cool night air. The human matched its slow turn, his eyes never leaving its gaze. Around and around they went. A silent exchange that none of the onlookers could understand. The beast's tail lashed once, and it launched not with full force, but fast enough to test him. He stepped aside with a smooth, almost casual motion. The beast's claws tore the dirt where he had been standing. Its head turned sharply, as if measuring him again. Lyra's nails dug into her palm. She had seen skilled fighters before, but this was different. The human didn't fight with anger or desperation. He moved with the same calm energy as the beast. For a moment, she thought it might attack again. But it didn't. Instead, it let out a deep, rumbling sound, not quite a growl, not quite a purr, backed away. Slowly, it turned and vanished into the darkness. No one spoke for a long time. The human walked back toward his spot by the rock as if nothing had happened. Lyra felt her pulse finally slow, but her mind was racing even faster. She wanted answers. But the way he ignored the stares told her he wasn't ready to give them. That night, she lay awake, listening to the wind. Every so often, she thought, she could hear the faint sound of something moving outside the camp. She knew the Krasver was still out there, watching, and she couldn't stop wondering if it was watching her or him. The morning came with a pale red sun. The caravan packed quickly, eager to put distance between themselves and the wildlands. But Lyra noticed the human wasn't in a hurry. He moved with the same steady pace, as if the night's encounter meant nothing to him. She followed him with her eyes, searching for some sign of fear or even pride, but found nothing. It was as if he had erased the moment from his mind. The others hadn't, though whispers followed him. Some said he had made a secret pact with the Krasver. Others claimed he carried a hidden weapon strong enough to kill it. But Lyra knew neither was true. She had been close enough to see he had carried no weapon, and no words had passed between man and beast. It was something else, something no one else understood. She decided she needed to know that afternoon. While the caravan rested by a dry stream bed, she approached him again. He was sitting alone, sharpening a piece of metal that looked more like a tool than a weapon. She stood in front of him until he looked up. His eyes were calm but sharp, like a blade that had been polished too many times. "You've seen it before," she said. Her voice wasn't a question, it was certain. His silence confirmed it. She stepped closer. "Where?" He set the metal down and leaned back. "Not here," he said. "Not on your world." His voice was low, almost distant, but I've seen its kind. Lyra frowned. "There's only one Krasver, the stories say. Stories are wrong." He cut in gently. "Predators like that exist on many worlds. Different shapes, different skins, but the same hunger." She felt a chill. "Then you fought them." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked past her, toward the horizon. "Fought," he said finally, and survived before she could ask more. A sound came from the ridge above the caravan, a sharp cry. Not human. The guards scrambled to position. Everyone looked up as a shadow moved against the sunlight. Lyra's breath caught, but it wasn't the Krasver. It was smaller, faster, with 4 thin limbs and a long jaw filled with teeth. The creature leaped down into the caravans path. Snarling, the guards fired, but the thing darted between the shots. It lunged toward a merchant, who stumbled back in terror before anyone could react. The human moved. His steps were quick, controlled, not panicked. He grabbed the creature mid-leap, twisting with a force that seemed impossible for his size. The alien beast screeched, claws flailing. But he slammed it against the ground. One hand pressed against its throat. Holding it still, its legs kicked violently, then slowed, then stopped. The caravan was silent. The guards stood frozen, watching him. He looked at the dead creature for a moment before letting go, wiping his hands on the dirt. "Not all predators are worth fearing," he said simply, and walked away. Lyra's mind spun. This man was no ordinary traveler. His movements weren't just quick, they were trained, precise. The way he had dealt with the smaller beast had been as natural as breathing. No hesitation, no wasted motion. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about what he had said. Not here. But I've seen its kind. It meant his life before this caravan was filled with things far worse than even the Krasver. But why was he here, on Zaire, walking among traders and farmers? Someone like him didn't just wander without reason. She decided she had to follow him. The next morning, when the caravan moved again, she stayed close, keeping her distance but never letting him out of her sight. She noticed how he scanned the horizon, how his eyes flicked toward every movement in the grass. It wasn't paranoia, it was habit. By midday, they passed through a narrow canyon, the walls high and jagged. The wind howled through the rocks, carrying strange echoes. Lyra's skin prickled. She felt like they were being watched. The human must have felt it too, because he slowed his steps. His hand brushed the metal tool at his side. His eyes moved across the cliffs above, searching. Then she saw a flicker of gold, far up on the rocks, the Krasver, watching. It didn't move to attack. It didn't roar. It simply crouched, their eyes fixed on him. The caravan didn't notice. They were too focused on keeping the wagon steady over the rough ground. But Lyra knew this wasn't random. The beast wasn't stalking the group, it was stalking him. For a brief second, its eyes shifted toward her, and she felt something strange. Not the cold fear of prey, but the weight of being measured, judged. Then its gaze returned to him, and the connection broke. The beast melted back into the rocks, vanishing like a shadow. Lyra's heart was still pounding when they left the canyon. She knew now this wasn't over. The Krasver wasn't just following, it was waiting for something. And whatever it was, she feared the day it decided the time had come. Night fell over the plains. The caravan formed its usual circle of wagons, fires burning low to hide their light from unwanted eyes. But the air was colder than usual, and the wind carried no scent of rain, only the dry smell of dust and something faintly metallic. Lyra sat near her small fire, trying to eat, but her hands kept tightening around the bowl. She couldn't stop replaying the look in the Krasver's eyes when it had watched them from the canyon. It hadn't been hungry, had been patient. That made her even more uneasy. The human was sitting alone again, a little away from the camp. His face was shadowed, his back to the firelight. She noticed his head tilt slightly every time the wind shifted, like he was listening for something far away. The guards walked the camp's perimeter, but they didn't notice the silence. In the distance, no crickets, no nightbirds, just the sound of boots on dirt. Lyra was about to stand when she saw it movement at the edge of the fire's reach. A shape too large and too smooth to be a wagon. It stepped into view without a sound, the Krasver, its golden eyes gleaming in the dim light. This time, there was no roar, no sudden charge. It walked straight into the camp, ignoring the guards as if they were nothing more than shadows. The air grew heavy. People froze where they sat. The human rose to his feet. He didn't grab a weapon, didn't call for help. He simply walked toward it. His steps were slow, steady, measured. The beast stopped a few paces away, its head low, tail swaying in slow arcs. For a long moment, they just stood there, predator and predator, their eyes locked. The wind pushed dust between them. Curling around their feet, the guards whispered, unsure if they should fire, but no one dared move first. Then the beast began to circle him, the same way it had before, but this time closer. Its massive shoulders brushed past the outer glow of the fire, casting its shadow across him. The human turned with it, step for step, his breathing slow, his gaze sharp. It feinted once, its head jerking forward suddenly, but he didn't flinch. Instead, his lips pulled into something that was almost a smile. Not warm, but dangerous. The Krasver froze mid-step, its nostrils flaring. That silent exchange made Lyra's skin crawl. She couldn't tell if this was a threat or some strange form of respect. Suddenly, the beast stopped circling and stepped in. So close its breath washed over him, hot and heavy. The caravan held its breath, waiting for claws or teeth to strike. Instead, the beast lowered its head slightly, just enough to meet his. Eyes on an even level, the human reached up slowly not to touch it, but to raise his open hand between them. The beast's eyes narrowed, its jaw tensed, and then it stepped back, not in fear, but in decision. It turned away from him, walked past the fires, and slipped into the darkness beyond. The entire camp exhaled at once, but the human didn't return to his place. He kept watching the shadows where the Krasver had gone, as if he knew it was still there. Lyra's chest was tight. She had never seen anything like this. This wasn't just chance, and it wasn't mercy. Something was passing between them every time they met. Something no one else could hear or see. When she finally approached him, her voice was little more than a whisper. "Why doesn't it kill you?" He glanced at her, eyes dark but steady, "Because it hasn't decided to," he said. His tone held no relief, no pride, only fact. That night, sleep never came to her. Every crack of the fire, every shift in the wind made her think of those golden eyes in the dark. Somewhere out there, the Krasver was moving, keeping pace with them, and she had the growing feeling that whatever it wanted from him, it was getting closer to taking it. The caravan moved before sunrise. The cold air bit at their faces as they rolled over the barren land. No one spoke much, but every few minutes, eyes turned toward the horizon behind them. The Krasver hadn't attacked, but its shadow was still over them. Lyra stayed near the human. She didn't try to speak at first. Just watch the way he scanned the land. His eyes were never still, always searching. When the caravan crossed a shallow ravine, she finally asked, "You said predators like that exist on many worlds. Did you hunt them?" He didn't answer right away. His steps slowed slightly. "Hunted, fought, killed. Sometimes all three," he said. "Not because I wanted to, but because I had to." She wanted to ask why. "Okay?" But before she could, he spoke again. "On my world, we don't survive by being the fastest or the strongest. We survive by being the most dangerous thing in the fight." His voice was quiet, but the weight in it made her shiver. By midday, the caravan stopped near a cluster of stone pillars, tall and jagged like broken teeth. The merchants set up to trade with a small alien outpost nearby. Lyra stayed close to him, sensing something in the air. It wasn't just the heat. There was a pressure, like the world itself was holding its breath. That feeling proved right. When a shout came from the far end of the camp, a guard ran toward them, yelling about movement in the rocks. Before the others could react, a shadow darted between two pillars, fast, low, powerful, the Krasver. But this time, it wasn't alone. Two smaller predators moved with it, their bodies lean but built for speed. The guards raised their weapons, but the human stepped forward. "Aim for the small ones," he ordered. His voice was calm but sharp, cutting through the panic. The first of the smaller beasts lunged, a blur of claws and teeth. A guard fired, dropping it instantly. The second darted around to the left, but the human caught it mid-stride, slamming it to the ground with brutal efficiency. And then it was just him and the Krasver. They stood in the open space between the stone pillars, the air thick with dust and blood. The beast's muscles rippled as it moved closer. Step by step, the human didn't move back, didn't blink. Lyra watched with her heart in her throat. The beast's eyes burned with something more than hunger. Now something sharper, like recognition. It circled him once, slow, deliberate, but then stopped and leaned forward. The deep growl that came from its chest seemed less like a threat and more like a question. The human tilted his head slightly, as if hearing something no one else could. "I'm not your prey," he said under his breath. "And you're not my kill?" The beast blinked once, a slow, almost deliberate motion. Then it stepped back, not out of fear, But as if granting space, its head lifted slightly, and four. The first time, Lyra thought she saw something impossible in its eyes. Something like respect. Without another sound, it turned and vanished into the maze of stone pillars. Leaving only the echo of its heavy steps behind, the guards lowered their weapons slowly, murmuring in disbelief. No one spoke to the human. No one thanked him. They just watched him walk back toward the caravan, his expression unreadable. Lyra caught up to him, still trying to understand. "It's not trying to kill you anymore," she said quietly. "It's testing you." He didn't deny it. "Predators don't waste energy on something they don't understand," he replied. "It's trying to decide what I am." That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She stared at the fire, the shadows flickering. Across the ground, somewhere out in the dark, she imagined those golden eyes. Not watching the caravan anymore, but watching him. And the worst part was, she didn't know which one of them she should be more afraid of. The next morning, the human was gone. Lyra woke to the sound of voices moving through the camp. Guards were arguing, some saying he had left in the night. Others saying they had seen a shadow follow him into the dark. The air was tense. The Krasver had not been spotted since the attack at the stone pillars. But everyone knew it was still near. Lyra felt a knot in her stomach. She didn't believe he had simply wandered away. He had gone to face it. She didn't know how she knew, but she did, and that terrified her. By midday, the caravan decided to wait. Setting up a defensive circle of wagons, no one dared to travel without him. Even the guards admitted that if the beast returned, they might not be able to stop it without his presence. Lyra couldn't sit still. She gathered her things and slipped away from the camp. Her steps were quiet, her eyes scanning the cracked earth ahead. She followed the faint marks in the dust. His boot prints, steady and purposeful. They led toward the jagged hills that marked the edge of the wildlands. The further she went, the quieter the world became. The wind faded, the air heavy and still. Even the insects seemed to have disappeared. She reached the top of a ridge and froze. Below her, in a wide, flat clearing, the human stood alone across from him. Emerging from the shadows of the rocks was the Krasver. It moved differently this time, not with the fast, aggressive steps of a hunt, but with the slow, deliberate motion of something that understood exactly what it was walking toward. Its golden eyes locked on him, and he didn't look away. They closed the distance until only a few paces separated them. The human's shoulders were relaxed, his hands empty. The beast's head lowered slightly, its tail flicking once. Twice, Lyra crouched low, barely breathing. This wasn't a fight, at least not yet. This was something older, deeper, two predators weighing each other in silence. The Krasver circled first, its claws scratching softly over the dirt. The human turned with it, slow and measured. The circle tightened, step by step, till the beast's massive shoulders brushed against his arm as it passed. Still, he didn't flinch. The beast's growl deepened. But it didn't strike. Instead, it lunged forward just enough to bring its face close to his. Their eyes locked, the air between them charged with something almost electric. Lyra's chest felt tight. She couldn't tell if the next second would bring violence or something else entirely then. In one sudden movement, the beast swung a paw toward him. The claws missed his face by less than an inch, but he didn't move back. He stepped into the motion instead, closing the gap until they were nearly touching. His voice was low, steady. "You wanted to see if I'd run." The beast froze, muscles tense. Then it stepped back a single pace, its head tilting in a slow, deliberate motion. Almost acknowledging, it turned away, but only for a few steps before stopping. It looked over its shoulder at him, letting out a deep, rumbling sound that carried through the still air. Then it began to walk, not toward him this time, but away into the hills. The human followed. Lyra's heart skipped. She scrambled down the ridge, careful to keep her distance. The path they took wound through narrow rock corridors and dry gullies. The sun dropped lower, shadows stretching across the land. After almost an hour, they reached a shallow cave. The Krasver slipped inside without hesitation. The human stopped at the entrance, glancing into the darkness before stepping in. Lyra stayed outside, straining to hear for a long while. There was nothing but the sound of her own breathing. Then she heard it low, steady. Like two heartbeats in rhythm, when the human emerged, his face was unreadable. He walked past her. Without surprise, as if he had known she was there all along, she fell into step beside him, unable to stop herself from asking what happened in there. He looked at her for a moment before answering. "It knows now," he said simply, "and so do I." She waited for more, but he didn't speak again, and in the silence she realized that whatever had passed between him and the Krasver, it wasn't over. It had only just begun. The caravan was preparing to leave the wildlands when the first warning came. A guard on the outer line spotted movement on the horizon. Not one or two shapes, but many. Dust rose into the air like smoke as a pack of smaller predators swept toward them, their bodies low, fast, built for the kill. Panic rippled through the camp. Merchants scrambled to load carts. Guards shouted orders. Weapons clattered. But Lyra's eyes were not on the attackers. They were on the empty space beyond the camp, searching for him. The human was not there. The pack closed in, their snarls carrying over the dry wind. The guards fired, taking down a few. But more kept coming. Lyra gripped her satchel and backed toward one of the wagons, her heart pounding. Then the sound came, deep and powerful, rolling over the land. Like thunder, it froze the pack mid-run. Every head turned toward the source. From the hills, the Krasver appeared. Its golden eyes blazed, its massive body cutting across the open ground like a living storm. And beside it, running with long, steady strides, was the human. They hit the pack together, the beast's claws ripped through the first attackers while the human moved with precision. Striking with brutal efficiency, the predators that survived tried to scatter. But the Krasver drove them back, keeping them trapped between its fury and the human's deadly skill. Lyra could hardly believe what she was seeing. The two moved like they had fought together for years. The beast's swipes cleared space for him, and his strikes opened gaps for it to finish. Every motion was instinct, timing perfect. Within minutes, the ground was still. The surviving predators fled far into the distance, the dust of their retreat fading into the horizon. The Krasver stood in the center of the clearing, its chest rising and falling. The human stood beside it, breathing hard but steady. The camp was silent. No one dared to speak as the two turned toward them. The beast's eyes scanned the caravan, but there was no hunger in them. It looked at the human, then at Lyra, holding her gaze for a long, heavy second before letting out a deep, rumbling sound that felt almost like a farewell. Without another glance, the Krasver turned and walked back into the hills. The human watched it go. His face unreadable, Lyra approached him slowly. "It could have killed us all," she said, her voice trembling. "Why didn't it?" He looked down at her, his expression calm, but his words carrying weight. "Because it knows I'm not prey," he said, "and now it knows neither are you." She didn't understand at first, but then she remembered the way the beast had looked at her in the canyon. The moment its gaze had measured her. It hadn't just been watching Hemet, had been deciding something about her too. When the caravan finally moved, the guards kept looking back toward the hills, but the Krasver never returned. Lyra rode near the front, the human walking beside her. The air felt lighter now, though she knew the memory of that golden gaze would never leave her as the wildlands faded behind them. She thought about the strange bond between predator and predator. How it had begun with a stare, grown through silence, and ended with a choice. She realized that some battles are not won by killing, but by earning the respect of something that doesn't give it easily, and somewhere far behind, in the deep shadow of the hills, a golden-eyed beast paused on a ridge, watching the caravan vanish into the distance. For a long moment, it stood perfectly still. Then, with a low growl that no one but the wind could hear, it turned and disappeared into its world again.